Alrighty, y'all. G'day. How you going? We are going back in time. I love doing this. I've done this before for different videos. It's been a while. We're going back to Australia. I'm not exactly sure where, but assuming one of the big cities. And this is in 1961. So that's quite a while ago. Especially as with any country, but I feel like especially Australia, definitely a different time. I think Australia is much bigger now. I think the culture's probably evolved. I think the cities are much bigger and more diverse and who knows what else. So 1961, very interesting time. I wouldn't know much about that. I wouldn't also know much about it even here in the U.S. just because I wasn't alive, but I know it was definitely a different time. And in my opinion, at least for the U.S., definitely an awesome time. It looks like day-to-day life, the music, the cars, the style, the fashion, all that stuff. So I think this should be kind of fun. This was suggested on Discord by TGirl009. So always great stuff from you. I really do appreciate that. And this will be linked down below. It's from ABC News, right? The Australian news. And I believe this centers around an Australian reporter finding American tourists back in 1961 and interviewing them about, I guess, how their stay is or something. That's what I'm assuming. So let's go ahead and check this out. This should be pretty interesting.
Whereabouts do you come from?
Oh, man, it would be even better if I showed it. There we go.
I come from Laguna Beach, California.
What do you think of Australia?
Oh, well, I'm very much surprised at the size of the city.
Yes.
I didn't realize it was anywhere near that size.
You've had some opportunity to meet the people and see the people?
Yes, I like the people very much. Any questions we asked were just answered so very politely in every way.
How about criticism?
Well, I don't have any criticism except the weather disappointed us a little bit. But no, I don't have any criticism to make.
I wonder what disappointed her. My only guess was maybe it's not as hot as she thought. Maybe it was cold, or maybe it was rainy. I don't know. What do we think her criticism was? But honestly, hey, that's not bad. That means if someone has to come up with one and they come up with weather, I think that means really there's no major criticisms. That's probably a good thing.
Well, your impressions of Australia over the period of 1 week.
What was that?
Well,
Hold on, let's go back.
Well, your impressions of Australia over the period of 1 week.
well, they're very favorable. The weather has been a little on the damp side. They've had some heavy
damp,
mist since
yeah.
weid been here.
But the city itself, the weather will change.
The city itself is very cosmopolitan. I compare it to our San Francisco on the west
Did I miss what city we're in?
coast. The people are delightful. We stayed in one of the finest hotels that my wife and I have ever stayed in, and this is the 5th continent that we visited.
Wow.
So I think we're in a position to say that, can I mention the hotel?
No, you can't.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
But,
Gotta love, that's always been around, and clearly in any country. Gotta love network TV and news shows, right? There's always weird rules and weird sponsorship conflicts and stuff. Can't talk about everything, right? That's why I love YouTube and alternative media, because you can just say what's on your mind truly and not be super restricted. Although certain times YouTube loves to be restrictive, which is annoying, but at least not in the same way network TV is. One thing I noticed right away, these Americans still sound American, but they just sound different, right? Like people talked slightly different. I feel like the reporter sounds Australian, but also sounds different. I can't quite pinpoint it. I'll try and analyze that more as we watch. But yeah, it's definitely a different time. Obviously, the fashion difference, the hairstyles, all that, you can tell is way different. People were more put together back then. That's why I love watching old stuff. I point that out every time, but I just can't not point it out. I mean, it's very cool seeing how everyone got around. Also, 1961. People talk about how everyone says that Americans never travel anywhere, right? Well, unfortunately, that is mostly true. It's just we're so far away from everything, combined with the culture here, man. Overworked, everything. It's expensive. It's expensive living here, and it's only gotten worse, especially nowadays. And most people work, and they just don't have time to travel. It's not because we're uncultured or because we don't want to see anything. Because we literally can't, right? Most people can't. So especially in 1961, where I feel like our country was doing well, but, you know, from talking to family over the years and stuff, I don't think traveling in 1961 was very common for the average American. So these people must have been really wealthy and very lucky to be able to travel to Australia, which is very far away, in 1961.
It's CH anyway.
From Indiana, near Indianapolis, and we've had a great tour of your country here, and we particularly like Sydney.
How about the people?
Oh, it is
And
Sydney,
the people.
okay.
Our greatest problem here sometimes is understanding them. And going to the rodeo the other day, I had much difficulty in getting the pronunciations of the A's. For example, on you say you're going to meet me on Hay Street, and you call that High Street.
Oh, I see.
And if you
Yeah, I mean, naturally there would be still some differences, which is kind of fun, right? The accents you would encounter throughout most of Sydney wouldn't be too crazy, right? It's, you know, pretty international city. Within Sydney proper, I feel like would still sound Australian, but they don't, you know, in my experience, sound super thick accents, where as an American you would literally be confused the whole time. But I don't doubt for a second he would notice certain words are said just way different, and as an American you're like, hold up, what? You say that? How?
you're going to have a late meal, a late lunch, you could say, well, that is a light lunch.
Very
So we
confusing
have
for a tourist.
confusion.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And
That is the right accent. Which I like,
You
though.
look like a
I like the way you
typical
guys say stuff.
I am. Look at this.
Look at, even back then, they had the cute, cuddly little koala toys, and I can't see what the other thing is, but she's got it right. She's got the straight up Australian souvenirs.
You just had your first look at Australia.
Yes, I have.
What are your impressions of Sydney?
I think it is simply beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful city, and the harbor is the most lovely thing I've ever seen.
You liked everything you saw?
Most everything I saw.
Now, Sydney would have been beautiful. Let's see what it looked like in 61. Let's look real quick. 1961. Let's see if it pulls up anything. Wow, did they not even have the Opera House yet? Were they building it? Remember, I take in so much info on this channel. My brain melts from all info, and sometimes I can't remember things. Let me look up when they built the Opera House first. Sydney Opera House. Let's see when this puppy was born. Okay, wow, that's interesting. So it started in 59. So it would have been under construction. For these tourists would have seen this under construction in 61. Founded in 1973. This thing took a while, huh? Holy smokes. Okay, so if we go back to this, let me go to this view so you get a better look. I mean, look at that. That is so weird seeing it under construction. I mean, I'm sure Sydney still looks beautiful, but that's such an iconic landmark. The Sydney Opera House has got to be honestly in the top 3 or top 5, like strongest icons out of, associated with the country and or a city in the world, right? I mean, it is so iconic. I feel like people in every corner of the earth can recognize the Sydney Opera House. So seeing Sydney without that, I feel like that would be bizarre. Because we're just used to it because it's here nowadays. But of course it wasn't always there. Holy crap, that's weird. I mean, yeah, obviously the Sydney Harbor area would have looked beautiful still. You have the boats, the yachts. Of course, the Harbor Bridge was there, so that helps with the aesthetic, right? This is 1960s. Wow, look at that. Look at this. This is a girl, Bernice Koppel, in swimsuit, kneeling on a beach, Hawkesbury River, Sydney, Australia. This is in 53, so this is going way back. Look at the old swimsuits. So interesting, right? I'm just trying to think of what it would be like back then, 1953, 1960, wherever, right? And you got that awesome beach life in Australia. I feel like, damn, I feel like they were really living it up back then. Like, you go back to 61, Australia is probably a great place to be. Here is a Pacific Highway, New South Wales, 1961. Look at that. That's awesome. Look at the old bus, the old shops right there. Look at the old utes. Dude, that is cool, man. And then here's some some other pictures. I mean, let's just simplify it. Let's do 1960s Australia. Get rid of 61. Just see if we get any better results. Wow. Yeah, so I think the conclusion of Sydney Harbor would have still been iconic looking, even regardless of the Opera House being done or not. Just little did they know, I'm sure, that one of the most iconic monuments or landmarks ever was just around the corner. Look at this old plane, this old airplane, Airlines of New South Wales. Now, that's different as well, right? I assume this is not a thing anymore, that airline, right? Although I wouldn't know. And one final one. Look at this picture. Look at all the traffic. We got people in the street. Look at this little, what is that? A little Fiat or something? And interesting how there's, looks to be like double-decker buses, yeah? This is at King's Cross. All right, back to the video.
There's something I expected to be quite lovely, maybe as far as the stores were concerned. But they have beautiful merchandise, but there's so much of it I couldn't find it. Everything looked too much.
What did you expect before you came? Did you have some kind of preconceived idea of what the city would look like?
And only the openness of the harbors, the longshore coast, is what I expected, but I didn't expect to see the lovely, magnificent oldness of the buildings. That was all such a surprise to me.
Thank you.
I loved it.
We're sorry about the weather, but we can't help that. Where do you come from?
From Los Angeles area. Bellflower, California, actually.
You look like a woman who's done some shopping in Australia.
Yes, a little bit.
Oh, tell us about the people you've come into contact with. How do they compare with those in Los Angeles?
Well, I find they're very friendly, but more outspoken. I think a little more bold and more honest in their opinions. I think. So, yes.
No, that sounds
That's
about right.
Because Americans generally have a reputation for not being very inhibited in their opinions.
Well, I don't know. I think the Australian people seem to say what they mean more than we do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, like I said, I feel like most Americans, remember, I always say this, you guys know this, I always say, like, what you see online, like Hollywood stuff and movies, like, those aren't Americans, you know, that's totally different. Or if you've only gone to the U.S. in Los Angeles or New York, again, that's not America either. Those should be their own micro countries. Yeah, regular American people are nice, but just like Americans tend to be friendly, but then they also tend to be non-confrontational, and to the point where, you know, we might, be a little more reserved, and also, you know, the old saying, like, beat around the bush a little bit, just have a friendly, smooth conversation and have no dips or rises, right? Whereas most other cultures, you know, if we're talking about Germans, if we're talking about Australians or British people, you know, people, from what I've always understood, is more, you know, can be friendly as well. They're also just more straight up and more honest. And, you know, that's not a bad thing. It's just sometimes shocking for Americans, because if we're in American bubble for a while, sometimes people aren't used to straight up honesty out in the world in conversations. So it could be funny balance sometimes.
You understood what they said?
Yes.
We've already had a criticism of that. The I's and the A sounds, you know?
No, you get used to it right away, I think. I did,
yeah.
Anyway. Like 1892.
Oh, wow. Do you make some
What do you do for a living?
artwork?
Well, I'm advertising manager of Logan Manufacturing Company in Glendale.
Oh, I see. Are you an artist by inclination, by profession, or what?
Well, it's been my profession for many years.
Now you're seeing Sydney through the eyes of an artist, eh?
That's for sure. And especially many points here to sketch, like Mrs. Macquarie, is that the way you pronounce it?
Mrs. Macquarie's seat.
Seat, that's right.
That was the personal aim
That's
of your
right.
artistic endeavor while in Sydney, eh?
That's right, and to keep out of the liquid sunshine, well, we got into the cave over there, and we made a sketch out of the cave.
Oh my God, that's loud. I apologize. Seems to be a ship in the background somewhere.
Your impressions of Sydney at this stage, eh?
Impressions of Sydney? Well, the hospitality, of course, has been mentioned many times, I imagine, as it would be. At the National Academy the other night, we enjoyed about 25 or 30 individuals. They gave us the pleasure of their show.
Do you think that Sydney is a carbon copy of somewhere else, like a big American city, or does it have a character of its own?
It has a character, definitely, of its own. The closest thing that comes to in cruising water would be Seattle, Washington, where they're cruising in the Inland Channel.
Yeah, that's a good, I feel like that's a better comparison from what I've seen. Like Seattle, Washington. Remember, I use comparison lightly. I think Sydney's unique, and I think a lot of cities are unique. So people shouldn't take too much stock into comparing things. I think it's more for fun, just to draw a somewhat basis on how things feel, like a vibe, right? Sydney, I think, would be unique. I think if you are stretching for a comparison, I wouldn't say like Los Angeles. I wouldn't say, anywhere in Florida or East Coast. I think Seattle is probably a better comparison of what, the vibe of Sydney would be like, kind of similar climate where it can get really hot. Otherwise, it can be kind of cool and wet, but never cold, never like super cold, never snowing like all day, because you're right on the water, right? So you have a lot of water, a lot of beaches. I think that's, Seattle's very cafe culture, very big into, great food, like good cities to kind of draw some similarities between. And I've never really thought about it that way before.
Except
but
that
I
it's
like
different
that.
again. It's different from San Francisco. One thing about the cab drivers here, though, the only place in the world where you touch a man on the shoulder, ask him to slow down a little bit. Even in New York, have I been able to keep up with it.
New York, eh?
Oh, no. And especially on the left-hand side of the street, it's a little nerve-wracking.
I love it. Even back then, they said, I don't know about the whole cab driver speed or whatever, but being on the left side of the road, it would just be weird as an American, right? That is so different. And it's funny to hear people, even back in 1961, say the exact same thing. That it would take a little bit getting used to being in a car and being on everything totally backwards on the street from what you're used to.
A couple of people standing very close together. Why is that?
Mrs. Richard P. Della Vedova.
Well, that's your name, but what's the
we're-
reason you're standing like this?
And we're honeymooning.
Well, I guess
Honeymoon
that's the
cruise.
best
Well, there
reason
you
in the
go.
world. It's
I'd
raining
say that's a reason.
behind me, but the sun's always out when people are on a honeymoon, it's been said. You've never been down here before?
Yeah, this is first trip south.
Well, how about your impressions as a woman?
Well, I found it very interesting with the shopping downtown. Lovely, lovely shops. I'd like to live here sometime and be able to go into the department stores and find everything that you'd need right here in one place.
What's your job?
I work with Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in California.
I was going to ask.
Whoa, Lockheed. Dude, that Lockheed Air... hold on, how did he pronounce it?
What's your job?
I work with Lockheed Aircraft Corporation.
Oh, Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, okay. That would have been before the merger then, because obviously now it's known as Lockheed Martin. Absolutely massive company that, of course, does make advanced aircraft and, weapon systems. They're big time part of the military companies over here to this day. Now, in 1961, I wonder if he was working... Oh, man. Don't you kind of wonder? I wonder what his job really dealt with back then, because 1961, that's SR-71 era. I wonder if he had any play in that, because that would have been an interesting time for
in California.
for
I was going to ask you
Lockheed.
to make some kind of comparison. I guess it's impossible in that particular field. What did you do while you were down here? Did you get away, from the tours and off the beaten track? I imagine if I were a honeymoon, I'd do just that.
Well, we took the tours, and we took a nightclub tour. We enjoyed them very much. We think your entertainment down here is wonderful. And besides that, due to the rain and the wet weather, we were a little bit restricted in what we could do. But we did shop, and we saw as much of Sydney as we possibly could. We just wish we had more time to spend here.
And
Well,
you
from a man-
sailed. And you sailed.
Oh, sailed. Yesterday, I was a guest on one of the yachts out in the harbor and sailed for several hours in the regatta and enjoyed the hospitality of the club. It was very, very wonderful.
Anything down here you didn't understand, being a foreigner, technically?
A little trouble with the language.
We've learned some new expressions.
Oh, have you?
Oh, yes.
I won't quote them right here because
I
you
won't
imagine what
quote
some of
them
them
there.
are.
That's right, especially on shipboard.
Even in 1961, is that classic or what? Oh, we've learned some new expressions. The reporters are like, yeah, not on air. That's not here, because God knows what it's, what it could be about. Australian expressions are always fun and always guaranteed for a laugh. Definitely might not be, radio waves or mainstream channel friendly, though. Absolutely love that. That was fascinating. We didn't even see all of it, so make sure you use the link down there because this is linked and watch the whole thing. It's fascinating to watch. Yeah, that is pretty cool. I love doing different stuff like this. I love taking a look into the past, especially when it's in other countries as well. And this was a cool connection, of course. We're in Australia. We're talking to Americans that got to go there, and what are their thoughts and impressions. I think it's pretty fun. Couple funny things. Like I said, the fashion's cool. I feel like these Americans sounded very interesting, a little more collected and just slightly different accent than you hear out of most Americans present day. And I suppose that's natural. I mean, this is, 60 years ago or so. I also want to point out something funny that, of course, this is just one instance, but I don't care. I'm going to point it out. That Australian reporter talked much louder than any of the Americans in the video. And I just found that funny because everyone says Americans are so damn loud. They were all pretty calm and collected. The Australian reporter was very loud and kind of in their face, but he was funny. The whole deal, it was very interesting. Thanks to T-Girl again for that suggestion. It is the weekend as well, so I hope you are having an awesome weekend. I really appreciate you tuning in to me as part of that. And of course, anything like this, please let me know. Either way, that's going to do it for this one. I hope you have a great weekend. I appreciate you watching. My name is Ian. You watched an IWrocker. Until next time, y'all, stay safe out there. I'll catch you later.